You know, recently I played Doom: The Dark Ages. It was so forgettable that I don't recall the story, save for a horrible voice acting.
Sire, the demons are now targeting the Sentinel's energy relay. It powers their transdimensional barrier. Yes.
And the depressing semi-open world levels that at one point I even rage quit over. Two cosmic relics. Oh my god.
Bruh.
And honestly, it got me wondering about the state of games today as a whole, as so many of them have come across as having their heart and soul plucked out. It is nothing more than paint by the numbers entertainment. And it really got me thinking about how great games used to be. And in order to understand why, we must first travel back to the boomer days of the 1990s and the early 2000s, long before corporate greed's terrible half-baked ideas took root and ended up infecting the entire gaming industry. It starts with a game that was so great that it did not just raise the bar, it literally grabbed that bar and then just launched it into orbit. And that game was Half-Life. Now, Half-Life was not your average first-person shooter. It did not have the clunky cutscenes which would yank you out of the immersion of gameplay, but instead chose to keep you squarely in the driver's seat. Every moment of the game, you are living through Gordon Freeman's eyes. The narrative was not spoon-fed, but instead unfolded naturally, pulling you ever deeper into its world. And one of the many components that helped achieve this was the level design. One of the many interesting decisions that Valve did was that they would lead you by light. So they never directly held your hand and said, there you must go. There's your point of entry. Voila. It was never flashy, but it always had enough to keep you engaged and not come across as this dull, empty world. But the way that they accomplished this was by having seamless corridors and labs that flowed like a well-timed symphony. When you were entering one zone to another, the most you would ever see is one word: loading. It would flash for a brief second, and before you know it, you were back into the game with little to no momentum lost. Then you kick in the sound design and the facial animations, which at that time were revolutionary. Half-Life made sure not to tell just a story. It immersed you in one, with balancing combat, with quiet moments that fit so perfectly, you never really wanted to stop exploring. I would always find myself talking to the security guards or the scientists to see if they had any little tidbits of information or thoughts. But compare that to today's single-player games. How often do you hit that wall? The wall that bores you out of your mind. There are plenty of games today that trudge you through empty spaces or repetitive tasks. I'm talking about the endless side quests. When was the last time that a modern single-player game made you crave the next level the way that Half-Life and Halo did? With Halo's epic, butterly smooth combat and stunning visuals even for its time, you were always aching to see what was coming around the corner. Or maybe you could always take the original Dead Space, not the trash remake that they came out a couple years ago. I'm talking about the OG Dead Space, that with every line of dialogue, it was dripping with dread or rage or desperation, which made your heart race alongside the characters. That was the kind of the fundamentals of a lot of games, is that they put the effort into making you care about the characters. So when things would go wrong, you would be immersed about their decisions and how the game was going to continue. And that was not just fun, but it made them unforgettable. But why? Well, I believe it has to do with the immersive storytelling, the seamless designs, and gameplay that not only captivated, but also respected your time and intelligence. No one wants to be treated like a fool, even if we are fools. Modern games today who treat their player bases like morons, and they make sure to let you know that they do. It comes across as if they believe all gamers are retarded, And thus, they don't have to really put the effort and time in, and it comes across as phoning it in because it leaves the players feeling disengaged or dreading playing the next checkpoint or chapter due to the lacking engagement and encouragement from the game with its underwhelming performances. World of Warcraft is a game that is legend. It is by far the biggest MMO that has ever been created. It is a titan that changed gaming forever. World of Warcraft showed the gaming industry what to do and also what not to do due to the receptions of the fans or the fact that they have failed to listen to their own fan base. But it will forever be, hands down, the greatest MMO ever crafted. WoW's influence warped the industry, and here are my few things that I think World of Warcraft helped screw up. See, WoW's success convinced the majority of developers and studios that every game needed an endgame in order to keep players hooked and coming back. Newsflash, single-player games do not need endless freaking grindfests. Forcing an endgame in all these single-player games does suck up precious time and resources away from crafting a truly polished and meaningful story. It's like adding a 10-hour epilogue to a perfect novel, which no one asked for or wants. The second issue is the microtransaction madness. Jesus, where do I even start? It tore open the floodgates for in-game purchases, and now just about every single-player game is infested with them. I have no problem paying $60, $70, and God forbid $80 for a game. But what I don't want is to be nickeled and dimed for everything else, whether it's weapons or skins. And sadly, the majority of players and every gamer has been a dick eater at one point in their life.
I've said this before, that if you build 100 bridges and you suck one dick, you're not a bridge builder, you're a dick sucker.
There's always been one game that got you good, that you were like, damn, I want to spend money where I shouldn't spend money, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you are consistently shelling out extra cash just to get these perks, like pay to win guns, you should probably log off, take a breather, go try to touch some grass. That's just my personal opinion. So why on God's good green earth do we need to have single player games with online freaking connections? Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. It was despised when they did it with Diablo 3. And it's been despised ever since then. Developers and studios have made sure to shove it down our throats. It comes across as a blatant ploy to milk way more money off of the players, or better yet, to kill off games as to force you to buy the remastered version, or maybe a shiny new sequel. I'm looking at you, Rockstar. And finally, I am sick and tired of sprawling open world single player games. Even with WoW making massive open world great for MMOs. But unfortunately for single player games, they are nothing more but a disaster. One of the points I can use as a great example is Doom: The Dark Ages. Just about every single level was some dumbass semi-open level design that dragged each chapter, making them almost 40 minutes longer than they should have been. I can't tell how many times I would go through the map and would have to aimlessly search because I'm trying to get all the upgrades for my weapons, and I ended up wasting 30 to 40 minutes per chapter just doing search. It was tedious, boring, and I freaking hated it. As an example of this also is Elden Ring. The amount of people that love this game is a lot. Its combat is fantastic. Absolutely gorgeous visuals and a very fascinating story if you can find this story. But I will never replay this game again because in the first 200+ hours that I played with this game, I spent the majority of my time sprinting across empty fields with nothing but repetitive fights to break the monotony. Simply put, open worlds in single player games dilute the experience. It's either going to leave you overwhelmed, bored, or frankly both. And one last example that I can pull off the top of my head is Path of Exile 2. That endgame is by far the worst part of the game. And I understand it's an ARPG, but I think its endgame makes my point. It is so chaotic that you almost dread finishing the main campaign. Open worlds truly belong in MMOs alone, and not in single-player games. Sadly, WoW's legacy has pushed the majority of single-player games into this trap. They started chasing scale, monetization, over a tight, focused experience that made legendary games like Half-Life, Halo, and Dead Space. They have focused so heavily on the wrong development that instead of crafting worlds we want to live, we want to dive in, studios and developers alike are building cash grabs we want nothing more than to escape from. The golden era of single-player games is being lost to time, and it is sadly fading fast. WoW's MMO blueprint really did hijack the gaming industry, dragging it into a mire of bloated endgames, predatory microtransactions, and forced online requirements. These trends prioritize profits over passion, which ends up leaving the players dreading the next level instead of diving in with excitement. And I believe that in order to bring back the single-player games to their glory days, quote unquote, developers and studios need to stop chasing WoW's shadow and focus on what makes the classics shine, with stories that grip you, designs that flow, and gameplay that respects your time. I want worlds that we cannot wait to explore and spending hundreds of hours in that don't feel like we are being forced to endure. And I believe single-player games is not dead by any means, but it is sadly buried under bad decisions. And I say, let's dig it back up.